Galai, lai, 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 galai, lai, 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 galai, lai, 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 galai, lai, 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 galai, lai, 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 galai, lai, 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 Kiva Moed, Kiva Moed, Kiva Moed, Kiva Moed. Yalai, lai, 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 yalai, lai, 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 yalai, lai, 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 yalai, lai, yalai, lai, lai, yalai, lai, 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 yalai, lai, 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 yalai, lai, 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 yalai, lai, 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 yalai, lai, 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 yalai, lai, 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 yalai, lai, 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 yalai, lai, 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 Kiva Moed, Kiva Moed, Kiva Moed, Kiva Moed. Let's sing Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. So I have a question. If you were being interviewed by a Martian from out of California, and the Martian wanted to know the thing that you found most meaningful about Passover, what would you say? And I'm asking because we're all deep into the prep of Passover, and sometimes the meaning of it all gets sort of melted away. Well, what's so meaningful about Passover? Why do we still do it? They got out of Egypt a long time ago. Sandy. Okay, so Sandy said it. Okay, good. Sandy said what came up when I was visiting family in Canada this week, that we're just remembering sitting around the table, you know, decades and decades ago and carrying on the traditions because the memories really carry us. There you go. Thank you, Sandy. Anybody else? What's meaningful about Passover? Ellie.
So we don't forget
What is it that we shouldn't forget?
the past.
So we shouldn't forget the past. Good. Well, there's no wrong answer. Anybody else? Why do we keep Passover? Dina.
Remember that freedom is always free.
So Dina said freedom is not necessarily free. Well, it isn't free. You have to work for it. Good. Anybody else? Why do we do Passover? Why are we having second night Seder? Because we like chicken? All right, we'll go like good Jews, right to left. Leslie and then Donna.
Because we were brought up with it and we do it.
We were brought up for it. What would Tevye say?
Tradition?
Tradition. All right. No. I'm not. It sounds like I'm mocking, but I'm just overtired, so I'm overcompensating. But that is a big part of it, right? That's what Sandy said. That's why we were talking about it. We were around that table 45 to 50 years ago, and yet my cousin said, "Do you remember when at intermission, at the break in the meal, we go and watch the hockey game? Because Montreal and Boston were in the finals every year when we were 10, 12, 14. Yeah. We sat, we were good kids, but we remember it so many years later, and the recipes. Sorry, Donna, why do we bother?
I to teach the children about our history and make
Right.
it fun for them.
Right.
Leaders aren't always fun for kids.
Right. So Donna said that we keep the holidays so that the children in our lives and future children in Donna's life can observe the holiday and see that it's fun, and so that the value and excitement and joy is passed on. Anybody else? Last? Who's going to have the last word? This is a big moment for some of us when we don't get the last word. David, what would you like to say?
For me, it wasn't the religious part. It was more the families getting together
No, I heard you.
Getting
Yes.
together, cousins seeing each other.
Good.
You know, if it wasn't for that, I may not have even had a relationship with some of my family.
Okay, I may not remember much more. So what David said is that it's the getting together with families, family members that you might not otherwise have had an occasion to develop stronger relationship. I call your attention to what I wrote in the bulletin, in the handout this week, that there are so many layers of the holiday, and many of the different layers are connected to the different names for the holiday. Well, more about that later. Page 196 in the top is a reading that I found. Our beautiful Mishkan Tefillah is a wonderful Siddur. Our movement does liturgy well. We don't just read the same things every week, and Gitai does not sing the same songs every week. So as much as he seeks out new music, I seek out new words. Let's read together at the top of page 196. The world is sunlight, restoring the soul, rejoicing the heart, bringing light to the eyes. More welcome than gold, a Torah from heaven. I have no light to give the morning. My Torah, my special human gift, is words. As I bring my words forth from silence, welcome them, you who redeems the sun from darkness. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMeorot. We're blessed with a lot of good music. When I was in DC with the confirmation students, the song that Gitai is about to sing was sung at a really raucous and beautiful and uplifting Friday night service. Ilana Arian's Hinema Tov, Gather Us, will lift our spirits.
Hinema Tov ומנעים שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומנעים שבת אחים גם יחד. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is,
How good it is,
how sweet it is,
how sweet it is
to be together on this day.
How sweet it is. I am pleased to be able to call forward our co-president, Sharon Kravis, for a few announcements. Bless you. Welcome.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. It's nice to see so many people here tonight. We welcome you in person as well as all of you online as well. Rabbi, thank you for leading us in services tonight. And Gitai, it's nice to have you with us. And Yvonne, you as well. Thank you for being with us tonight to lead us in services. Jody, where are you? Thank you. Thank you and Tim for being our ushers tonight. We really appreciate it. Also, I want to thank our great tech team back there, Ryan, Chris, and David, as well as running the chat on YouTube, Helene and Brandy. So really appreciate everybody's efforts. So Shabbat greetings tonight are from Ted and Noel. They are here, as well as part of the Magnella family is here, and Rita and Sue are here, and we want to say hi to Bob as well. So thank you guys very, very much. So some upcoming events that we have our, like Rabbi mentioned, our traditional second night Seder. So you guys have till the 30th to RSVP. It's on April 2nd, so you have a few more days to RSVP. The religious committee's doing a good job putting everything together, but help them out by having enough food. On Sunday, April 12th at 2 p.m., adult education, we are having guest speaker Laura Gold, and she is speaking about genealogy. She's the president of the Jewish Genealogical Society, so it's at 2 p.m. And big gala on April 18th. We are celebrating our 70th anniversary. You need to RSVP before April 4th to take advantage of our early bird prices. Again, all these events can be found on our website. Please RSVP. As a reminder, the emergency exits are back there, as well as behind our tech team. Shabbat Shalom, and have a lovely Passover.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Sharon. And congrats to your husband's favorite baseball team. Before Navan comes up, I want you to know that Gita will be leading the second night Seder with me, and it'll be joyous and uplifting and so full of music. We enjoyed it 2 years ago when we did it together.
That's right.
Navan.
Please turn to page 13 for Shiru LeAdonai.
Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash. Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash. Sing unto God all the earth a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God and we'll all sing along. All the earth a new song unto God. Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash. Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash. I will sing unto God a new song.
We love new things at our temple, but we believe in having candlelighting every week. I am pleased to ask you to rise. Leslie Berger is going to honor us with a reading and the recitation of the blessing. Page 2 for the blessing.
As the great doors of night are opening, we come into the clean, quiet room of Shabbat. Let us be thankful as we light these candles, like eyes of holiness, for this moment of peace. Let us savor the fruit of the vine, the blood of the earth that quickens us. Let us be thankful for grain, fruit of grasses that feed the cow, the gazelle in us. Let us be grateful for the children and the work of the week that are our own fruitfulness. Let us, as we eat, never forget that food comes from the earth we must cherish and heal. Through labor, we must respect and reward. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu l'kadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu להדליק נר של שבת. Amen.
Please be seated.
Please turn to page 21 for Lechado D. Please stand as you are able for the last stanza.
לה לה לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לה לה לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לה לה לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לה לה לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, כי שמיענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם תפארת ולקהילה. לה 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 לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לה לה לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה. מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לה 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 לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לה לה לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי. אורי שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לה 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 לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לה לה לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום עטרת פלה, גם בשמחה ובצולה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, לה לה לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לה לה לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לה לה לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לה לה לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
Please remain standing for the Baruch on page 28.
La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 ברכו את אדוני המבורך. And you respond, ברוך אדוני המבורך, המבורך לעולם ועד. המבורך, המבורך לעולם ועד.
Please be seated.
Please read with me on page 30. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv arabim, v'chochma botea she'arim, uvit runa masane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, Sader et hakofim yishmirtehem bakir kirtsono Boire yom v'layla v'lel or mipnei hoshech v'hoshech mipnei or Umavir yom uvei laila Umavdil ben yom uvei laila Adonai tzavo shemo El Chai v'kayam Tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai Hamariv Aravim. We continue on page 32 for Avat Olam.
Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael Amcha ahavta Amcha ahavta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu lemadeta Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shochbeinu V'kumeinu nasiach b'chukecha ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נגי יומם ולילה נגי יומם ולילה ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל.
Please rise for the Shema, page 34.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam
Please be seated and turn to page 36 and read with me. Ve'yafta et Adonai Elohecha bechol avavcha uchol nafshecha uvechol meodecha vechayu advarim ha'ele Asher Anohi Mitzavecha Hayom Al Levavecha Vishinantam Levanecha V'dibartam Bam V'shivtecha B'veitecha U'lechtecha V'aderech Uv'shebecha Uv'kumecha Uv'shartam Le'od Ayadecha V'hayu letetafot b'neinecha uv'taptam al mezuzot peitecha uv'isharecha leman tiskeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'dikem kedoshim Eloheihem ani Adonai Eloheihem Asher hotzieti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem Elohim ani Adonai Eloheihem. Please turn to page 40 for the Micha Moha.
La 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 מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא, נורא תהילות עושה פלא. מלכותך ראו בניך, פה קיים לפני משה ומרים. זה אלינו ואמרו, זה אלינו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. Sing it with me. Ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya la 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 ya la la la.
Please turn to page 42 for Hashkiveni.
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום, מעתה ועד עולם. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים.
Please rise and turn to page 44 for the Vashamra.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
Please remain standing for the tefillah on page 46.
Adonai שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, ve'Konei Hakol, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, הוא מתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצליח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Please be seated.
Please turn to page 61 for an English reading at the top of the page. Grant us peace. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the people of the earth. Bless the country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations, may content with reign within our borders, health and happiness, and strengthen the bonds of the friendship and fellowship among the inhabitants of your land. Plant every victory. Praise are you, Eternal One.
ברוך אתה אדוני, המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום.
Please turn to page 60 for Shalom Rav.
שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. כי אתה הוא מלך אדון לכל השלום. כי אתה הוא מלך אדון לכל השלום. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם תשים לעולם תשים לעולם.
Thank you, Gitai. Let's take a moment for private, personal prayer. We believe in the power of prayer and the power of community. So in that spirit, we'll turn to page 253, or you'll look on the screen behind me, and join Gitai in singing Mi Sheberach.
Mi Sheberach Avoteinu Mekol HaBracha May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen.
At this time, we pray for our members, Bob Rubin, Joe Gorin, Sherry Held, Jeff Shear, Sue Rubin, Joe Manriquez, and Peggy Rivka Horowitz. Family and friends of members, Sviv and Berta, Terry Trujillo, Lisa Rockoff, Meryl Tobias, Karis Palsma, Rich Solomon, Sherwin Baffel, Henrietta Goitzman de Moya, Jean Thornton, Jenna Wienstock, Edward Zimmerman, Noah Wienstock, Julie Ide, Lori Wiesel, Robert Hagler, Gloria Schmidt, Sandy Levy, Marianne McCarthy, Anne Aimlung, Charlie Austin, Steve Lee, Karen Hulse, Kathleen Schmidt, Eliza Kurtz, Sheila Filzin, Isaiah Mauricio, and Jenkins, Jim Greenspan, Flo Ebling, Gilbert Delgado, Sue Craven. And just three people in my world, my mom, Bracha Badlea, Joe Schwartz, and Maria Clegg. As is our custom, I'll now recite at the request of the people whose names I'll say silently. I'll say these names to myself, and then we'll change it up. I'll ask you if you have any names to add, so just give me a second. Anyone, folks out there, would like to pray for? Thank you. Eileen's on the silent part of the list. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. In the back. Anyone back there? Elaine, I thought maybe you had. Yes, I said it. Okay. Yes, Lori. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Harry. Thank you. We pray for soldiers out there fighting for Israel and the United States. We continue with the second half.
Mi sheberach imoteinu lekol habracha leavoteinu. Bless those in need of healing, with refuah shleima, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Amen.
Amen. So I'm pleased to introduce David Bocarsley. He's the Executive Director of Jewish California, formerly known as JPAC. Jewish California is the community's unified voice in Sacramento and the nation's largest statewide coalition of Jewish organizations. Since David took the helm in 2022, Jewish California has secured over $450 million in state funding for Jewish priorities and passed 57 bills into law, including AB 715, a first in the nation law addressing anti-Semitism in California schools. Before leading Jewish California, David worked for elected officials at every level of government and served as director of the California Legislative Jewish Campus. He was a Coro Fellow and UCLA's first kippah-wearing student body president. Please welcome David Bocarsley.
Work? Great. Thanks, Rabbi. Thanks so much for having me. It's so good to be here. Shabbat Shalom to all of you. So it was a very kind introduction. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit about civic engagement. And happy to talk a little bit myself, but also want to share about the work we're doing, and then ultimately hear maybe some of the questions you have, and take this conversation in a way that all of you are interested in, to hear about what is maybe front of mind for you and what we can do as a community to be able to move in a direction that helps bring safety and prosperity to all of us. So first, really quickly, I know that Rabbi Len gave a little bit of my background, but I do just want to share how I came to work kind of in and around the political world. And it started, I grew up in the San Fernando Valley in the conservative movement. I was very involved in USY and Camp Ramah, did a gap year in Israel, and then ended up at UCLA. And quickly found out that there wasn't a strong Jewish representation in UCLA student government. So I started getting involved myself, and before you know it, I'm running for student government, and I'm elected, as the rabbi said, as UCLA's first kippah-wearing student body president at a really interesting time. I was doing this work at a time when, this is about 15 years ago, when the state was divesting from higher education at record levels. This was right after the Great Recession, and tuition was skyrocketing. And also, and so as the elected student body president at UCLA, my job was to really be an advocate, be a voice for the community towards the state government, and try to make sure they invested in education at a bigger level. I was also a visible Jew at a time when the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel was becoming a statewide campaign, and trying to hold my public position as an opportunity to represent my own community. And that experience led me down a really amazing and interesting path at the intersection of Judaism and politics. And I've had a lot of different jobs over my career in that kind of niche intersection. I worked for members of government at all levels of government. I lived in New York and worked for Congressman Jerry Nadler, doing his Jewish and Israel work. I moved back to Los Angeles and worked for Senator Ben Allen, doing his Jewish and Israel work. And that ultimately led me to staffing the California Legislative Jewish Caucus, a group of all of the Jewish elected officials in our state house. And in that work, when we were, when I was working for 18 Jewish elected officials in Sacramento, our job was to try to represent the needs and the interests of California's Jewish community within government. But to do so, we have to make sure that we're working with California's Jewish community. And the organization that represented the diversity of our community was then called JPAC and now called Jewish California. So I got to work very closely with the organization I now run, and have been now leading this organization for about 4 years. Now, I want to take a step back before I talk specifically about what we do and how we affect change, to talk about the importance of government. First of all, I know I'm sure many of you are familiar with what's happening, with some of the high-level things, at least, that are happening in D.C. In fact, I understand your confirmation folks just got back from D.C. And this is, kind of an exercise I'll do when I'm speaking to different groups is, I'll say, my guess is that most of you know who the President of the United States is. Is that not along if you agree with that, right? Yeah. My guess is that most of you know which party controls Congress. Maybe not as many of you, but most of you probably know which party controls Congress. There's a good chance you might know who your member of Congress is. You might have voted for them or heard them speak recently. What I found is that a lot fewer people know that there is a really powerful government happening in Sacramento as well. There is a legislature of 120 people, 80 assembly members and 40 senators that are making policy and overseeing a budget and an economy that is incredibly powerful, incredibly impactful in our day-to-day lives. And most people are unfamiliar that it exists, and if they're familiar that it exists, they're oftentimes unfamiliar with who their representatives are or how to affect change. So I want to take a moment to just say why paying attention to Sacramento is important. And by the way, this is not anyone's responsibility other than kind of the general public. The media is paying so much attention to what's happening in in DC that there is very little coverage of what's happening in Sacramento. So it's understandable that so few of us are really paying attention. But our 120 legislators and governor are overseeing a $450 billion budget every single year. It's almost $500 billion that they're receiving from our tax dollars and putting back into our society. They're passing laws, usually they're passing upwards of 1,000 laws every single year that impact so many facets of our day-to-day lives, impacting 40 million people in our state. These are laws around roads and infrastructure, schools and education, our criminal justice system, our cityscape, and our security. There's so many things that we touch and see every single day, why a building is there and why an apartment is there and a home and a restaurant and a synagogue can be placed in different places. These are typically decisions made by government officials at the local and state level. And the other thing that this legislative body does is it oversees our economy in California that is one of the biggest in the world. And some of you may have heard this statistic, but if California were its own country, it would be the 4th biggest country in the entire world. That means the United States, China, Japan, and then California would be the ranking of the biggest economies in the world if we were our own country. By that standard, the governor of California and 120 elected officials in Sacramento are arguably more powerful than parliaments and prime ministers and presidents of 98% of the countries around the entire world. And we have access to those elected officials a 45-minute flight away in Sacramento, or when they come back to their district right here. And in fact, it's not only those things that are important, but California is also the home. We outsource so much to the global community between our tech industry and our entertainment industry. What's happening in California has such a huge impact, not just on Californians, but on the entire world. And so when we pay attention and are civically engaged into our state house, we can have a huge impact on what happens to our lives. So my organization tries to do that. We try to unite California's Jewish community to serve as our voice in Sacramento when our community has needs and when we want to further certain values for our community. Now, we're a coalition of all the major Jewish organizations across the state. All the Jewish federations and JCRCs, Jewish Family Service Agencies are part of Jewish California. We have national organizations that have a California presence that have joined our membership, like the ADL, AJC, HIAS, Hadassah, NCJW, Mazon, JC, the alphabet soup of all these major Jewish organizations. So many of them have joined our coalition so that we can truly speak with one voice to Sacramento. And if you know these organizations, you probably know they do a lot of different work. And those organizations don't always work together or work on a lot of the same issues. But they've bought into this notion that here in California, we can be stronger together. So what we do is we uplift a policy agenda that serves all of the different issue areas that our Jewish community cares about. We focus on what I call core Jewish community issues, like fighting anti-Semitism and hate, supporting Holocaust and genocide education, community security initiatives, including the security that you have outside your synagogue, and supporting the California-Israel relationship. And we also work on what I call core Jewish community values. That's fighting hunger and poverty, that's serving immigrants, children, and older adults, that's working on climate initiatives. These are issues that our community cares about, and we have Jewish organizations doing that work, so we're going to make sure that we uplift all of those values to Sacramento. And because of that work, as you mentioned in the introduction, just in the last couple of years alone, we've been able to secure almost $500 million from the state government for core Jewish community issues. And a vast majority of that it goes to a program called the Nonprofit Security Grant Program. Over $300 million in the last 4 years have gone from the state to the Nonprofit Security Grant Program at our request, and that's the money that funds security guards and cameras and gates and lighting systems and interconnected devices to keep us all safe in our synagogues. We've put tens of millions of dollars towards supporting Holocaust survivors to ensure that they can age at home with trauma-informed care and with dignity. And we've helped rebuild the Jewish summer camps that were destroyed in recent wildfires. And so much more. Again, we also make sure that we're working on issues that affect the most vulnerable among us, not just Jews, but that include Jews, right? People who are experiencing hunger and poverty, people who are victims of domestic violence or human trafficking. Those are issues that we're able to uplift too, because we know that it's so important to what it means to be Jewish, to stand with the vulnerable. We were vulnerable too. So we've been able to work on a lot of these different issues and help uplift all of your voices, the issues that you might care about towards Sacramento and make a big difference. And because there are fewer people paying attention to what's happening in Sacramento, when we show up, when we're organized together, we're able to have a huge impact, and I think I described that impact. There are still a lot of special interests in Sacramento, and so it requires a lot of effort, but we've been able to compete with a lot of with a lot of other industries that have potentially a lot more resources than we do and are a lot more organized. And perhaps most consequentially, we've been focusing the last number of years on helping to address what we've seen in our school system. We've seen a really stark rise in hate incidents and anti-Semitism in our public schools and on college campuses. And we've spent a lot of time over the last number of years trying to pass policies that help address our education system. And perhaps none were more important than a bill that we got passed and signed into law last year, AB 715, which is a comprehensive bill to address a lot of different issues that we've seen in schools, from kids being bullied on the playground and in the hallways, to teachers teaching curriculum that was biased and bigoted towards our community, to them saying things that might be problematic without any sort of recourse, and to some problematic comments and actions that we've seen even from our elected leaders running school boards. And we were able to create kind of a really a landmark first in the nation policy to address this. And amidst a lot of opposition, because we've done a lot of work with the legislature and built a lot of these relationships, we were able to pass this bill with 106 out of 120 votes in Sacramento, which is a major, major feat for our community. Since then, it has been sued by a couple of anti-Israel groups, but upheld by the courts. There was a bill recently introduced to try to undo or gut our existing bill, but that we've made sure that and we hope and are optimistic that's not going to go anywhere. There is a concerted effort, day in and day out, for people to push an agenda that furthers an education system that I think creates harm towards our Jewish community, and we've taken it as our obligation to try to make sure that we fight back against that and protect our Jewish students. So there is so much work that I think we need to do in our society today, so many challenges that we and other vulnerable communities are experiencing. We have an opportunity to raise our voice. We have an avenue to make a huge impact that isn't a 5-hour flight away. I'm thrilled to be just a piece of this, but know that we can only do this because so many people have also chosen to engage with our work. I mentioned we have 43 organizations that are part of our membership, but we also have hundreds and hundreds of Jewish community members who come up to Sacramento and lobby with us and raise their voice. We have tens of thousands of people who join our action alerts and make calls to their elected officials. And through all of that, we've been able to build an awareness and an understanding of our community's needs. So is that okay? I'm gonna stop there, and I'm happy to take any questions that any of you might have and take the conversation in any direction you'd like. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. So we are a membership-based organization. I'm sorry, repeat the question. Is that what you're asking? Yes. The question was, how is my organization funded? The answer is we are a membership-based organization, and so each of these 43 organizations that are part of our membership pay annual dues to be part of our coalition and to be able to be part of creating our policy agenda every year. Now, for much of our history, and we've been around for over 50 years, but we've really been, I'd say, a relatively sleepy organization for a long time. And only in the last couple of years have a lot of these organizations realized the power of state government, right? And this is kind of what I'm trying to do as well, go around and speak to as many people as possible to share about the power of state government and how much impact we can have when we get involved. And I think our community is waking up to that in recent years with incidents that have happened at the state level around curriculum development, with things that elected officials are saying, and also positive developments with the growth of the nonprofit security grant program and Holocaust survivor assistance, right? So I think our community is starting to realize the importance, and our member organizations have continued to join at a higher rate. So just since I started 4 years ago, we had 25 members when I started, and we're now at 43. So our budget has grown a little bit that way, but it's also only a piece of what we need to be able to continue to grow. And so even though we were historically just a membership-based organization, now we also rely on, and we need to be able to grow with resources from private family foundations and individual donations. So it's a combination of all of those things.
All right, hang on.
Oh, yes, microphone, sorry.
What specifically are you doing to prevent or try to make people aware of anti-Semitism in the school, like when kids are bullied, or
Yeah.
what kinds of things are you doing? I was with the school district for a long time. My son was a victim of
I'm sorry to
bullying.
hear.
I became, at the very end of my career with the principal, when he found out I was Jewish, some things happened, but so what exactly are you doing? I mean, I stayed there and I did my thing, but
Yeah.
what exactly, his comment to me when he found out I was Jewish is your husband Jewish too? So, and I had worked for over 30 years before I ran into that, but so what specifically are you doing to prevent these
Yeah.
kinds of things?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question, and I'm sorry to hear that you had that experience. But unfortunately, that's become far too common, and we need to make sure that we're pushing back and creating a safe learning environment, not just for our students today, but also making sure that we're educating a generation of people who are going to go into the world with empathy and understanding. Yeah. What are we doing? Yeah, I promise you I will answer that question. But I just want to affirm how important it is for those two reasons. So our work in the education space started about 7 years ago, I'd say, at a much deeper level. The state was developing an ethnic studies curriculum to be used by school districts across the state because ethnic studies has become more and more popular in our K-12 schools. Ethnic studies was founded in California 50 years ago in higher education, but more and more, as it became more popular on our campuses, more and more K-12 schools said, we want to adopt this as well. We think that our history courses have only been teaching one history, and we want to make sure that the experiences of communities of color is also being taught. Now, from my perspective, if ethnic studies is taught well in a way that helps build trust, empathy, and understanding, and teaching people's different stories, uplifting the positive, representation of those communities in our society, that's good for everybody, including Jews. And the problem is when ethnic studies is used as an opportunity for people to learn to insert harmful material in the classroom, that becomes a problem. And so when the state was developing its ethnic studies curriculum, there were some people involved in that process that put very harmful content into the proposed curriculum. There was stuff about Jewish control of the media. There was stuff about that Jews think that all Arabs are terrorists. There was this long list of different forms of discrimination that included racism and sexism and homophobia, like you might expect. It included Islamophobia and capitalism, but it omitted anti-Semitism as a prevalent form of discrimination. And it was riddled with anti-Zionism and anti-Israel sentiment. So when we saw all of that, that became a top priority for us to make sure that we addressed the issues in this ethnic studies curriculum and then addressed the issues of its implementation in schools. So we led a 2-year public engagement process from 2019 to 2021 that ultimately fixed all of the major problems focused on the Jewish community and ethnic studies. And the final curriculum that was adopted by the state was celebrated by a vast majority of California's Jewish community across the political spectrum. So that was one major success story. The problem is, all the schools across the state started implementing ethnic studies, and the people who had wrote the problematic first draft tried to write an alternative version that they were shopping around to districts. So now you have a state-approved curriculum that we thought was okay, and you've got a really problematic curriculum that's being shopped around by kind of radical activists. And we had to go district by district by district to educate them about what the challenges were with what was in this curriculum, and the challenges were with the people who were writing it. We had some successes and sometimes when we weren't successful, and we ultimately realized we needed another legislative solution. There's 1,000 school districts in California, and for us to be able to make an impact across the state, we have to do so from the legislature. Otherwise, we have to be in every single district, and we don't have Jews in every district. And we might not win in every district, so it's important to protect the safety of our community by making policy. So we worked on a number of different bills over the course of many years to try to enact reforms to ethnic studies that ultimately got pushed back time and time again from a lot of the teachers' unions, who happen to have, I think, really problematic leadership at this point. We worked on a bill about transparency in our education system, and that got pushed back. So we pivoted, and we worked on a bill about standards and frameworks, which tell teachers what you can and can't teach in the classroom. And that got pushed back. And ultimately, we decided to write a bill last year that became AB 715 that addressed anti-Semitism not just in ethnic studies, but in all of the classrooms. It also addressed what was happening in the schoolyard and at the school board. Now, I'll be very specific about what's included in this bill, but as I mentioned, it's pretty comprehensive. One of the things that it does is it creates the first in the nation ever statewide anti-Semitism prevention coordinator. So now we're going to have someone who's appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate, whose full responsibility is to develop trainings for teachers and school leaders about anti-Semitism, to teach people how to identify anti-Semitic incidents in schools, and guide school districts on how to respond to incidents. They will also receive all of the complaints that are made about incidents in schools and how they were adjudicated, and be able to publish that data online and make policy recommendations into the future. That oversight and accountability model is a massive step in the right direction, but it's not the only thing that we need to do. We also have created some complaint procedures that never existed before. So now, if there's an incident in schools, a teacher, a parent, a student, a community member can file a complaint with the district directly and also directly with the State Department of Education. And the State Department of Education we've empowered to make unilateral decisions on what's happening at the school district, whether there was discrimination or not, and then ultimately tell them what they can and can't do in the classroom. So that's another big initiative that we were able to succeed with. We added guardrails to state law that says curriculum has to be factually accurate. It kind of sounds obvious, but people really pushed back on this notion that curriculum has to be factually accurate and should be apolitical and non-biased, and allow people to teach and learn critical thinking and multiple perspectives. This is now, it's surprising that it wasn't, and it's surprising that it had so much opposition, but this is now in law, and people can be, you could file complaints and have adjudication based on this law. And there are a number of other, smaller kind of tweaks that we made around statute as well to try to help, with education of our teachers and the like, and expand communication with parents and all that. So there's a lot of different steps that we are taking. It's obviously never going to be a silver bullet, and we still have a lot of work to do. But it's proven to be tremendously successful so far, and we are going to continue to work in that space. One other thing I'll say, and I see your hand, is that we've been focusing, this is separate from that, the AB 715 and ethnic studies, but we've been focusing a lot on Holocaust and genocide education too, which we believe is one of the most effective ways to teach contemporary anti-Semitism prevention education. When we teach about what happens when bigotry goes unchecked and how that is manifested today in society, and how the power of speaking up, people can learn to help push back against that in society. And so we've been able to expand that in our schools in a major way. That's been a huge initiative.
Hang on. As I walk to our social action chair, Lori, I want to say that what's interesting to me is that at least people my generation and older grew up with ADL, right? So we're fighting like at the micro level, right? Because when I was a rabbi in Boston, we had fighting intolerance or a tolerance curriculum. But I think what David is saying is just a different way of it being approached, so it's systemic. So Lori, we
Yeah,
have time for a
exactly.
short question. And then David, well, I want to say David and his wife have a sweet little baby, and he probably wants to get home at some point, so let's keep it as best we can.
I was reading about Senate Bill 1387, Jews as an ethnicity.
yeah.
I don't understand it.
Sure, I'm happy to
So-
talk about it. I think that this is a really exciting bill for our community. So this, what this,
Sandy, you spoke before as a retired teacher, as is Lori, so they've seen it from the inside.
great. So SB 1387 is a bill that we're introducing this year. What it would do is it would create, it would amend certain laws that we have about data collection, and it would say that if you're collecting data about ethnicity, then you should also make sure you're collecting data about the Jewish community. Now, why is this important? According to the most recent Pew data of Jewish Americans, 53% of American Jews say that religion is either not at all or not a very important part of their Jewish identity. 53% say that religion is not at all or not a very important part of their Jewish identity. I'm someone who identifies as a religious Jew. I wear a yarmulke. You were all here in services on Shabbos evening. Clearly, you also are also connected to your religious identity within your Judaism, and that's amazing. And that is the case for according to this data, about half of American Jews. My guess is that you also connect with your Judaism in other ways, the same way other religious and non-religious Jews do too, through culture, through food, through language, through shared values, through shared characteristics, through community. Now, all of those things are things that are defining characteristics of peoplehood or of ethnicity. And if you talk to another person of other religions, what you'll oftentimes hear, let's say you talk to, a Catholic and you say, or someone who's born Catholic, you say, you're Catholic. And you'll oftentimes hear someone say, well, I was raised Catholic, right? I don't think you'll typically hear someone say, well, I was raised Jewish, but I'm not Jewish. You say, well, I'm an atheist Jew. I'm an agnostic Jew. Or I'm Jewish, but I don't practice. You hear that. But people identify with their Judaism in a real visceral way. And unfortunately, in our data collection systems and in our state statutes and in our hate crime data, we don't acknowledge that. And what that means is that the Jewish community is both misunderstood and miscounted. And that's problematic for a number of reasons. One, if we're misunderstood, if people believe that the only Jew is someone who wears a black hat and has long sideburns, right, then they're not going to understand our community. They're going to minimize us, generalize us, and that ultimately can lead to misunderstanding and ultimately bias and discrimination. And we see that happening. Also, if we don't have the right data because someone is not categorized appropriately because of how they look or how they pray or how they practice, we aren't able to effectively make policy that will influence our community. So, for example, there were, you might have read about this, there were two people, these Jewish Israeli Americans in San Jose a couple of weeks ago, were at a non-kosher restaurant and broad daylight got beaten up because they were speaking Hebrew. Other than the fact that they were speaking Hebrew, which is a language that is shared amongst our Jewish ethnicity, they had no visible Jewish identity. They weren't wearing yarmulkes, they were at a non-kosher restaurant, they weren't visibly Jewish other than their Hebrew identity. That hate crime might not be categorized as an anti-Semitic hate crime. It might be an anti-nationality hate crime. They might be categorized as they were persecuted because they were Israeli. Or it might be a Middle Eastern and North African hate crime based on geography, because our demographic data in the state does collect data about Middle Eastern and North Africans. But it might not be collected as an anti-Semitic hate crime. And if we are undercounting hate crimes, we aren't able to effectuate the policy we need to protect our community. Same thing goes for student outcomes, and same thing goes for healthcare. We are, as a community, have health, genetic, issues that we need to study. And if we aren't tracking genetic diseases in the Jewish community, like Tay-Sachs and others, we might not be able to put money towards research. So the data informs policy, and it's really important to have accurate data, and that's kind of the primary of what the bill is. But beyond that, there's this kind of major question that I think we're raising, which is, what does it mean to be Jewish? And if we can open that conversation to the general public, both by introducing this bill and by making sure that our community is represented in surveys that you might fill out when it says, what's your ethnicity, and gives you the option to say Jewish, if people see that and they start to realize, oh, Judaism is more than just praying, then that helps build a deeper understanding of who we are, and hopefully will help us better exist in society. What do you mean by, so you're asking if it's misconstrued by a separate race? Yeah, do you mind clarifying more?
You could probably hear me, but okay, certain cultural attributes are Jewish attributes. So I don't want to see Jewish people put into, I feel like we could be put into a box with this too. You like this kind of food, you're Jewish. You have whatever the other cultural things were that you said. I guess I feel like every religion has a cultural background to it. When I think of my culture, I don't think of it as Jewish. I think of that as my religion. My culture is American, and the things that I've gleaned from Judaism my whole life, but I don't know that that's my culture. I don't know that I want to see culture on a form and then me writing Jewish for that, for culture. I don't mind writing it for religion, but for some reason writing it for culture, I'm not 100% okay with that. It reminds me of the Jews in the camps in Germany.
Yeah.
That they were thought of as a completely different kind of being. So I just don't want to head that way again. And that's kind of part of my confusion with this.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that thought. And the first thing I'll say is, one, when you do data collection, it's aggregated data, right? So no one, I've heard some people ask me, well, can't someone then build lists of Jews? You don't see when you submit this data, these are surveys that are collected by state agencies that are already existing. They're already asking you what your ethnicity is. And the options usually are like very long. They've got 20 or 30 options, and they're asking you all the different types of Asian American groups you might be a part of, and all the different types of black groups you might be a part of, whether you're African American or whether you're Jamaican American or whether, they've broken it out in this really granular way. And what they do is they take all this data and they use it and they aggregate it, and it's used to create policy.
I think we have about 90 seconds left.
Sure.
So, and I want to claim 15 seconds.
No, I know it's a good point. I hear you, and I want to say that I actually don't believe if you asked a Catholic leader and a Muslim leader if they identify as if they think that their religion extends to ethnicity in the way that Jewish leaders would say so, I think that they would actually say that they don't. Many Muslims, and not all Muslims, have an ethnicity, and that's Arab. Right? They have the Arab ethnicity. And a lot of people who were born in America, just like you, who say America is my culture, they would still check oftentimes on the ethnicity box that I am Asian American because my family is from there, and I, eat certain foods that are traditional to me, and I talk a certain way, and I engage with people in a certain way because those are things that I was raised with, and that brings me in community with people. And so I think that's really true to the Jewish community, and it's also not true for every Jew, and that's okay, right? When you ask people to opt into data, it's totally optional, and that's the beauty of it. So you might not, if you're asked what your ethnicity is, you might choose, American isn't an option usually on this data, but it might say white. You might choose white. And someone else might say, I do, when I see that when I get asked what my ethnicity is, I don't like selecting white, I think I'm racially white. But I think that my ethnicity is much more complicated than that. And I oftentimes will select other and write in Jewish. And I know so many people who feel that way too. So it's not for everybody. This is what's beautiful about this bill is it starts a conversation. It doesn't create lists that could be harmful and harmfully used like Nazi Germany, which you were referring to. And it's an optional add-on. So it will be great for people who feel seen by it, and for those of the people who don't like that, don't have to select that for yourself either.
No,
I appreciate
it's
it.
important because we usually have these conversations on Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock. And it's very important that we have other settings when we have a different crowd that is there with our great adult education programs to go deeply into something. 30 seconds. I think that for me, what's appealing, but I also hear what you're saying, so I can see it both ways. To quote a Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan wrote a big book that I lent to Tim, and we're still going to talk about it. Judaism is a civilization, right? It isn't just what you believe. Jews, you could not believe in God and you're still Jewish. So what I'm hearing and what's being explained is that it's to have more representation for Jewish ways of connecting so that people who, right, because in the Middle Ages they had a right we don't end our services with, but Yigdal. Maimonides 13, I can't do 13 with one hand, never mind two, statements, if you believe these, then you're Jewish. But that's not really a Jewish thing, right? And when the University of Judaism existed, before it morphed into AJU and now is basically closed, there was an art gallery, there was a dance class, there was performance spaces. So that's what I'm hearing, but I clearly understand we're the same generation, right? You wanted to be where I grew up, you wanted to fit in. And the big thing when I was growing up, and I'll shush myself because I didn't want it to go this way, is right in college we'd say, are you a Jewish American or are you an American Jew? And for me, we're both. Like, I don't think we need to choose, right? We're all of the above, especially being Reform, left-leaning Jews, right? We are full of the community. We're participating in many parts of the community. We do a lot of work in the larger community. But I also want to say, and end as a rabbi, that Passover resonated in what David said, because 36 times it says in the Torah, because you were Gerim, you were foreigners in the land of Egypt, then you have to care for the vulnerable. And so for me, the more people that identify as Jewish in a way that works for them, that then help us do the work that we do on our shared committee, then that is going to help us live out the values of Jewish life. So it isn't only those of us already in the camp, because maybe some folks don't feel like they're really part of our camp, and the more we have doing the work that defines what God gave us, and whether you believe in God or not, there are values that inform everything we do individually and collectively. So we'll stop for now. Thank you, David. Very glad you schlepped all the way from Pico Robertson.
Oh, yeah, thank you so much. Can I make my pitch?
I think what I'm going to say is going to lead to your pitch.
Okay, great.
When David, either when we had coffee on the West Side or when David spoke to the Kehila Committee in Long Beach, you spoke about synagogue beginning to become part of your group. So that's what I wanted to talk about.
Great. So I'm really excited that, as I've said, we've grown from 25 organizations across state to now 43 as our membership. And we just built out a whole initiative to try to engage synagogues, because I believe when we say we want to be the unified voice of our Jewish community in Sacramento, we should represent our full community. And our synagogue life is thriving, and we need to make sure that your voices are heard. So I made an initiative that I wanted to engage synagogues in our membership. We just had our first synagogue, Valley Beth Shalom, in Encino, join us. And I have a number of other synagogues who have already started to apply for membership. I think if it interests you, we would love to be able to have your synagogue join our membership so that your perspectives, your voices, your questions, your ideas can be heard in Sacramento. So that's one thing that I really do hope that you'll consider. And then the second is, on an individual basis, if you happen to be available on May 11th and 12th this year, we have our big lobbying and educational conference in Sacramento. As I mentioned, it's not as far of a flight as a lobbying conference to DC. It's pretty easy to get up there. We're only there for about a day and a half, and it's a really empowering experience to get to network with over 700 Jewish community members from across the state. And almost every member of the state legislature will participate in our program in some capacity on either in our networking events or in lobbying meetings and all of that. We've got some incredible speakers and some incredible learning opportunities, and just want to encourage you, if anything that we talked about today resonates with you and you want to be able to be part of that, I want to encourage you to look into that and potentially join us in May.
Thank you. And David will stay for a little bit into the ONEC. Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Please rise. We continue with Aleinu. We're just used to doing it. We didn't put the page.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונה. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
Before we recite the Mourner's Kaddish, our custom is to recite the names of the people for whom Shiva or Shloshim are being observed, in addition to those for whom Kaddish and Yartzeit are being marked as well. Carrie White, friend of Peggy Horowitz, is in the Shiva or Shloshim period. The people for whom the Kaddish of the year is being said are Terry Lynn, Karen Katz, Isaac Sander Piesberger, Arlene Hoffman, Joe Tea Sr., Ted Levoot, Harry Hemleben, Irene Krieger, Consuelo Avalos, Hope Greenwood, Trudy Hill, Jeff Pivos, Sydney Bennett, and Gertrude Trudy Berger. The people for whom Yartzeit is being observed are as follows: Louis D. Frank, Zelda Miklos, Francis Ann Cohn, Samuel Fuhrman, Jack Gulko, Robert J. Miller, Robert Hahn, Jerry Kravitz, Gary Emery, Esther Benveniste, Israel B. Polavoy, Helena Doodlebaum Dubovi, sorry for any mispronunciations, Lou Piltz, Robert Crane, Meta Resnick, Dora Doodlebaum Duvoy, and Peggy Berglis. Does anyone have a name that they would like to add of a dear one who fits into any of these categories? Then join with me, if that is your custom, or remain standing to give support to those who are mourning. Page 294. Yit Kadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah B'alma Divrach Hirutei V'yamlich Machutei B'chayechon V'yomechon U'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala Uvizman Kari V'imru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Leolam Umei Omaya Yit Barach V'yishtabach V'yit Bo'ar V'yit Romam V'yit Nasei V'yit Hadar V'yit Haleh V'yit Halal Shemei Dekudasha Berichu Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tushbachata V'nechamata Da'amiram Be'alma V'imru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shmaya V'chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'imromav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Thank you to everyone for being here. We appreciate you coming out, whether it was for the speaker or the camaraderie or Yartzeit, or you just want to see some people before you go back to preparing for Passover. It's a meaningful holiday. If anyone wants to borrow a Haggadah just to get an idea of different ways to approach it or reading, let me know. I have many I could bring in. Navan, if you're in there, I just can't see, please come forward, because we each have a cup of grape juice waiting for us. I promised your parents it is grape juice. The blessing over the wine is found on page 5. Thank you for leading with us today, Navan. There's the wine. Okay.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam אשר קידשנו במצוותיו ורצה בנו, ושבת קודשו באהבה וברצון הנחילנו, זיכרון למעשה בראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
You've done good. We are going to conclude with a jazzy version of Oseh Shalom. I wish you strength. We have a new person visiting, Jennifer Matson and her sweet daughter. We look forward to meeting you at the Oneg. Shabbat Shalom and an early happy Passover.
Oseh Shalom bimah. Oseh Shalom bimah. Hu yaseh shalom. Hu yaseh shalom. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. Oseh Shalom bimah. Oseh Shalom bimah. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shabbat Shabbat.